They say I have 14 days. 14 days to bend my knees. 14 days to surrender a nation's dignity in exchange for their approval. 14 days to trade the blood of our ancestors for a seat at their table. But when that letter arrived, sealed with the cold authority of men who believe they own the world, I felt no fear. I felt clarity, a sharp light cutting through centuries of deceit, revealing what has always been hidden beneath their promises of peace and progress. For too long, the chains that once clanked in the sun have been replaced by paper. Contracts, sanctions, loans, each link forged not in iron but in ink, designed to bind us with the illusion of partnership. And now the mask has fallen. The same hands that claim to guard democracy have declared that freedom itself is a crime, unless it serves their interests. They call this an ultimatum. I call it a confession. For in their arrogance they have shown the world that what they fear is not weapons or armies. It is the sight of Africans standing upright. They tell me to apologize, to pay $600 million for daring to speak truth to power, for refusing to allow my people to die quietly in the dark. But how do you compensate those who have already stolen billions? How do you apologize for reclaiming your own soul? My brothers and sisters, these threats are not new. They are echoes of every empire that has stood on African soil and mistaken kindness for weakness. Yet we have survived them all. Empires that once thought themselves eternal now live only in history books, while Africa, wounded but unbroken, still breathes. So let them come with their papers, their signatures, their stamps of power. Let them believe that authority can erase conviction, because what stands before them is not a man, it is a movement. It is the heartbeat of a continent that has remembered its rhythm. When I speak, I do not speak for myself. I speak for every farmer who tills the red soil under a sky of broken promises, for every mother who buries her child because medicine was locked behind the price of foreign patents, for every young man and woman who refuses to be told that their future must be imported from elsewhere. They call themselves the United Nations, but united for whom? Were they united when Libya burned under bombs disguised as liberation? Were they united when Congolese children clawed cobalt from the earth to power foreign phones? Were they united when the wealth of Africa filled foreign banks, while our own streets filled with hunger? No, their unity begins and ends with interest. They claim neutrality, yet their silence always favors the powerful. They call for peace, yet they arm those who wage war. They condemn corruption, yet their corporations build empires upon it. The hypocrisy is so vast that it no longer hides, it boasts. And when a small nation like ours stands tall and says no more, they call it defiance. If standing upright is defiance, then let us be the most defiant people the world has ever known. They have given me 14 days. 14 days to erase centuries of resistance. 14 days to silence millions of voices rising in unison. But 14 days are enough to awaken a generation. 14 days are enough to remind a continent that dignity is not negotiable. Let them mark their calendars, for when the clock strikes, they will not witness surrender. They will witness rebirth. The air in this hall grows thick with the silence before thunder, the kind of silence that precedes history. I step closer to the microphone, not as a president, but as a man who has looked oppression in the eyes and seen fear staring back. You see, they do not fear my words, they fear your awakening. They fear the day when Africans realize they never needed permission to be free. And that day, my brothers and sisters, has come. The United Nations sends letters, but we send a message. The era of submission is over. The age of imposed obedience is ending. We will no longer measure our worth by their currency, or our legitimacy by their recognition. We are not poor. We have been robbed. We are not weak. We have been restrained, and we will not be silent any longer. Look at their reports, their resolutions, their carefully worded condemnations. They write paragraphs while we bury generations. They hold conferences while we hold funerals. They raise flags while our people raise the dead, and yet they call us unstable. What greater instability exists than a world that demands our silence in exchange for survival? What greater violence exists than the theft of a continent's future under the name of partnership? But this is not a speech of despair. It is a declaration of awakening. For too long they mistook African silence for ignorance, African patience for weakness. But now that patience has burned away, leaving only clarity. We do not seek conflict. We seek respect. We do not seek revenge. We seek restoration. We are not against the world. We are against oppression in every form it takes. So when they threaten sanctions, let them. Sanctions cannot starve a people who have learned to feed themselves from their own soil. Isolation cannot frighten a people who have already been alone for centuries. We have nothing left to lose except our chains. And what they call isolation, we call purification. Cleansing our nations of dependency, rediscovering the power that comes from within. Look around you, Africa is rising. From Bamako to Niamey, from Ouagadougou to Dar es Salaam, the drums of unity echo through the night. The young have stopped waiting for saviors. They have realized that they are the saviors. The workers have stopped asking for crumbs. They are baking their own bread. The leaders have stopped reading speeches written in foreign capitals. They are writing their own in the languages of their ancestors. And that is what terrifies the world, that Africa has found its voice and it no longer trembles. When they say I have 14 days, I hear them say the world has 14 days to face the truth. Because in 14 days this movement will not end. It will multiply. In 14 days their threats will fade, but our conviction will grow louder. In 14 days they will realize that the days of commanding African destiny from afar are over. My brothers and sisters, freedom is not something granted. It is something taken. It demands courage, sacrifice, and sometimes loneliness. But better to walk alone in dignity than march in a crowd of submission. And as the world watches, wondering if Burkina Faso will bend, let them watch closely. Because we will not bend. We will build. We will teach our children not to fear the word independence, but to honor it. We will raise our flag not as decoration, but as declaration. And to those who still believe Africa can be managed, disciplined, contained, know this: you cannot contain the wind. You cannot discipline the tide, and you cannot silence a people who have remembered who they are. So I say to the so-called guardians of peace, keep your letters. We have read enough of your lies. Keep your deadlines. We have lived under them since the first ship crossed our shores. And keep your money. We have finally realized that the wealth of this continent does not come from your pockets, but from the soil beneath our feet and the spirit within our hearts. We do not hate you. We have simply outgrown you. The world may not yet understand what is happening, but history will. It will remember that when the powerful demanded surrender, a small nation stood tall. It will remember that when the world turned its back, Africa faced forward. And it will remember that when they gave us 14 days to die, we took 14 days to begin to live. The chamber was silent, yet the silence was heavy, like the air before a storm that has been gathering for centuries. Ibrahim Traoré stood tall, his voice calm, but carrying the weight of millions. He looked at the world not as a man begging for recognition, but as a son of Africa reclaiming what was never truly lost, only silenced. He took a deep breath, and his words rolled through the room like thunder, measured, deliberate, unstoppable. They think we are alone, he began, but we are many. They believe our unity is a dream, but that dream is already waking. His tone was defiant yet filled with an almost spiritual clarity. For centuries we have been told to wait for fairness, to wait for justice, to wait for progress. But time has shown us that waiting only feeds the oppressor's comfort. So we will wait no more. He paused. Cameras blinked. The world listened. They gave us 14 days, he continued. But they do not understand that the African clock does not tick on their schedule. For them, 14 days is a countdown to surrender. For us, it is the beginning of a rebirth. He raised his hand as if holding the invisible chain that had once bound his ancestors. They say we are free, yet they measure our freedom by how much we obey. They speak of democracy, yet they choose our leaders for us. They fund our elections, then buy the results. They call it foreign aid, but every coin comes with a hook. The room murmured, but he pressed on, voice rising. They tell us to sign their contracts, to accept their loans, to believe their promises. But look at where those promises have led us. Villages with no water, children digging for cobalt with bare hands, lands poisoned for the sake of profits that never reach the people. And now they dare speak of human rights? Whose rights? The rights of corporations to own our soil? The rights of empires to rewrite our history? He leaned forward. No, the age of deception is ending. He walked from the podium, pacing like a teacher addressing his class. A class made of presidents, diplomats, and the so-called guardians of peace. They talk about stability, he said, but their stability means silence. Their peace means obedience. Their justice means submission. But Africa's peace will not come from silence, it will come from truth. Africa's stability will not come from fear, it will come from unity. And then he turned his gaze directly toward the rows of international envoys, those who represented the same powers that had drafted the ultimatum. You have sent me letters, threats, warnings. But let me remind you, we have buried too many of our heroes to be scared of paper. Sankara was killed for dreaming. Lumumba was silenced for speaking. Nkrumah was overthrown for uniting. Gaddafi was bombed for building. But what you fail to see is that you did not kill them. You multiplied them. Every fallen son of Africa becomes 1,000 voices that will rise again. The air grew thick. Some lowered their eyes. Others shifted in their seats. Your ultimatum means nothing to a continent that has survived centuries of ultimatums, he thundered. You want to sanction us? Then sanction every mother who still feeds her child despite the hunger your policies created. You want to isolate us? Then isolate every farmer who still grows hope in the dry soil you left behind. You want to silence me? Then silence the millions who now speak through me. He paused, letting the words sink deep. Because this is not just about Burkina Faso. This is about every African nation that has been told it is too small to matter, too poor to decide, too divided to stand. That lie ends today. He turned toward the cameras, his voice softening, almost tender, but the conviction remained unshaken. Brothers and sisters, my message is not of hate, but of awakening. We do not hate the West. We reject its arrogance. We do not despise other nations. We demand equality. We do not seek revenge. We seek respect. But respect is not given. It is earned. And today, Africa earns it not through war, but through unity, through courage, through the unbreakable will of her people. He stopped and placed his hand over his heart. To my African brothers in Mali, Niger, Guinea, Congo, Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, and every corner of this sacred land, know this. They will try to divide us. They will whisper that one nation's freedom is another's rebellion. They will offer you money to betray your brothers. They will send you weapons to fight each other while they count your gold. But hear me. Our enemy is not among us. It wears a suit, sits behind a desk, and signs documents that bleed nations. His voice grew louder again. When they say they want to help Africa, ask them this. Who helped you when you were building your empires? Who lent you money to colonize the world? Who sent you peacekeepers when your wars burned half the planet? Nobody. Because power respects self-reliance, not dependency. The speech turned from defiance to prophecy. Mark my words, he said. In the next decade, Africa will rise, not as beggars, not as servants, but as architects of a new order. We will trade with dignity. We will govern with honor. We will educate our children in truth, not in lies written by those who enslaved us. We will mine our gold, not for foreign banks, but for African schools, African hospitals, African futures. The audience was frozen. Some were angry, some inspired, some afraid. He smiled faintly. You think I am just one man, he said quietly. But I am the echo of generations. You can remove a man, but you cannot erase a movement whose time has come. He lifted the ultimatum letter that had started it all, a symbol of everything Africa had endured, and slowly tore it in half. The sound of paper ripping echoed louder than any applause. This, he said, holding the torn pieces, is your power. And this, placing his hand on his chest, is ours. He raised his eyes to the world one last time. You gave us 14 days. We give you eternity to understand that Africa will not kneel again." The hall erupted, not in applause, but in the rumble of something deeper. Some stood in shock, others in awe. Outside, the streets of Ouagadougou were already alive. Young men and women waving flags, singing, chanting his name. But Traoré didn't see himself as a hero. He saw himself as a messenger. He walked, away from the podium knowing the battle was not over. It was just beginning. In villages across Burkina Faso, the speech played on old radios powered by the sun. In Mali and Niger, soldiers whispered his words in their barracks. In Congo and Sudan, youth gathered in classrooms to discuss the message. Even in the distant cities of Europe, where African migrants worked in silence, something stirred. A sense of pride, of belonging, of awakening. And as the night fell, a new dawn began to rise. Not from the skies, but from the hearts of millions who had been waiting, not for permission, but for courage. Would Yai,